I often mention that my format doesn't really let me dive deeply into some of these games. For adventure games in particular, I have to play them with a walkthrough in front of me, so I'm not really getting the full sense of the game. I can tell you this, though. Mindseeker is the worst Famicom adventure game. It's potentially the worst Famicom game. It's infamous among Famicom fans for one reason. Mindseeker requires that you be psychic in order to beat it. That's not a joke, that's not hyperbole, that is an actual requirement of the game. Mindseeker was the brainchild of Masuaki Kiyota. If you've heard that name before in conjunction with video games, that's because his claims of psychic abilities are also the basis of the series Fatal Frame. He was basically Japan's Uri Geller, right down to copying Geller's spoon-bending tricks. The game places you in the role of Kiyota's protege at his Psychic Institute. And your first goal, after receiving explanations of how all of the psychic tests in the game work, is to perform well enough on those psychic tests so that you're allowed to leave. My back-of-the-envelope calculations is that it'll take about an average of 20 attempts to beat the test by random chance. Until you beat the test, you can't get into the rest of the game. In my playtime, I wound up walking back and forth between two different locations, going through all of the example and baseline testing, and then failing the graduation test over and over and over again. If I could have gotten outside, I would have encountered the same test, only with the graphics changed. And naturally, you have to beat all of those tests using your psychic abilities. Or alternatively, you could save in between each of those challenges, since Mindseeker has a battery save feature, and then just repeat them over and over again until you get passed by raw luck. And since in the real world there's no such thing as psychic powers, the second one is really your only option. Although they may take different forms, there's really only 3 different tests that you undergo. First, you have Zener cards and predict which of the 5 will appear. You're supposed to be checking your telepathy, but since there isn't another person looking at the cards, it's not like it would work that way anyways. Test number 2 is psychokinesis. You're supposed to be testing whether or not you can turn a light on and off with your mind. In reality, the game just randomly determines if a light turns off and on every time you hit the button. Since you're supposed to be training your psychokinesis here, I guess they want you to manipulate the transistors in the Famicom to do that? Admittedly, there have been times when I've tried to hold logic gates open with my mind. In the third type of test, you're given 5 options and have to predict which one will come up. You're supposed to be testing your precognition with this one. Now, the more clever among you may have noticed that this is functionally identical to the cards. And to that I say, you know more about statistics than a professional psychic. When you're not training your psychic powers, you can explore your environment with 2 options: Feel and Exit. Feel causes a cursor to come up, and you can point at what you want to interact with. At least in the training segments, you have to use that to interact with the training machine and initiate the psychic test that lets you open the door to your bedroom. I was a little bit disappointed that Mindseeker doesn't follow in the footsteps of a lot of psychic researchers and just assist their test subject with getting the answer. It would definitely help the feel of the game if players were suddenly told that they were getting everything right. Setting aside all the problems with the adventure, Mindseeker is also way below Namco's usual standards. Selecting a high text speed also increases the speed of the animation, which just winds up looking strange. Also, the music in this game is abnormally loud and extremely harsh. I've actually turned down the game audio in this recording, though usually I have it tuned to a level that I like. Even if Mindseeker wasn't promoting some very harmful con artistry, it would still be a terrible game. Let's pretend for a moment that psychic powers are real. In that case, Mindseeker would only be playable by a very, very, very tiny proportion of the population. As it stands though, it's just unplayable for everybody.